Welcome, everybody, here to the Basketball Passport Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined on this fine Sunday evening as Leigh and I both have simultaneous flu games. If this was the 90s Chicago Bulls, it would be Jordan and Pippen holding each other up is how this would look. Leigh, how was your Thanksgiving? How you holding up?
Yeah, not too bad. You know, we obviously don't have any extended family in the country, so we have a pretty local one, just with some of the other Latino families or non-American families. We get together and just have a grill. I did a turkey a few years ago, but it was just too much and nobody really ate it. So this year I just got some chicken legs, some chicken breasts, threw them on the big green egg, and that was it. So it wasn't the most traditional of all time, but it was one of those ones where a few of the neighbors who were around, you're like, hey, you want to come over? You doing anything? Nah, great. Come on over. Let's have a bottle of wine and eat some food off the grill. So it was fun. It's fun. Just not your typical American Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we had something closer to that. Although I will say this, I don't know why we do the turkey thing. Like turkeys of all of the things that we could possibly eat, it's the most boring meat. It's like the breast is always dry.
Yeah.
The dark meat's fine, but you still have to like douse it in gravy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's a high, it's a lot of effort for minimal return, you know?
Honestly, the only time turkey is good is when it hasn't been cut yet.
Right.
It just looks impressive.
Yeah.
You take it out of the oven and everybody's like, wow, look at that. Way to go. And everybody like takes a bite of it. It's like, it's not.
You want that big turkey leg to just gnaw away on.
Yeah.
And that's it, you know?
I get that, but I get that at like fairs and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're better there. So.
Yeah. Huge they are too at those carnivals and things like that. They're just gigantic. I'm like, oh, how much steroids must be pumped into these things to get their legs that big, you know?
Turkey was actually on Jurassic Park. Today on the show, we are going to be talking about a few fun stories here where in the East, you have some team making runs that make the East look a little less embarrassing.
Yes.
The Milwaukee Bucks have quietly turned things around, winning 8 of their last 10. The Orlando Magic continue to turn things around as Reese Shea seems to be kind of distancing himself from other potential Rookie of the Year candidates, I think. We have in the East also the Orlando Magic. They have won 9 out of their last 10. So we'll talk a little bit about the East getting better. In that same conference, the Cavs have, they've lost a few here in a row. They have only won 7 out of their last 10 after, coming out of the blocks, winning 15 in a row. So you have, some teams here that have kind of made the East to look a little bit more compelling. It's not just Boston and Cleveland and everybody else. The East is looking a little bit better. And then, because it's the West, we just created 2 other good teams here where the Memphis Grizzlies appear to be figuring things out. The Houston Rockets are finding that really cool blend between productivity from veterans and growth from their young core, and that's making for a really fun team as well. So we'll get through all of those stories, and then at the end of the show, we will be teasing this week's destination, which obviously we didn't get to last week as it was Thanksgiving, where Leigh is going to be taking us to Paris. A quick reminder, please do hit the subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcasts, as well as here on YouTube. If you're watching us on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@basketballpassport. You can always send us emails at the nice and handy mailbag, which you see right there, basketballpassportpod@gmail.com. And we'll go ahead and get this thing and keep this thing rolling between the Bucks, Magic, and Hawks. Which of those 3 teams do you find most compelling right now?
Well, it's hard for me to go past the Hawks because I've been to every game and they just came off a doubleheader home and home where they beat the Cavs. First team to beat Cleveland in Cleveland. and then came back here and absolutely smoked the Cavs down here in Atlanta. And then it was interesting because that was on Friday night, the second game, and then Saturday night, last night, the Hawks were in Charlotte, and there was no LaMelo Ball, there was no Miles Bridges, and no Trey Mann. And even the Charlotte Hornets broadcast there, Eric Collins and Del Curry were like, the Hawks have just beaten, the best teams in the league 2 games in a row. You can't give one back to the Hornets here. You've got to go out and get this one as well. And they did, but it was it was very, very tight there at the end. The Hawks didn't put them away. I mean, but again, I think part of it is when you face Cleveland the way that they did up there in Cleveland, they came back. Again, I'm not sure how much of it you saw. First, probably 6 to 8 minutes, the Cavs were up by 19 points on the Hawks, and it just felt like this was a blowout city, and then the Hawks came just storming back into it, tied it up at the end of the quarter, and then went on to win quite comfortably in the end. And it was a real upset, and you thought, okay, the Cavs, again, have been playing so well this season. They're going to regroup and they're going to come back and really pop the Hawks in the rematch here on Friday. Early tip-off too, 2:30 in the afternoon. But it wasn't the case at all. The Hawks played one of the most impressive games they've played all season. Trey was great. Jalen Johnson, he's been fantastic. And Zachary Rissachet, you mentioned him earlier. He's on a little bit of a tear right now. And I really love 2 things about Rissachet. His confidence does not sway even when that shot's not falling. It's clear the instruction from the coaching staff has been, if you've got it and you're set, shoot it. Just let it fly, because he catches it and he just shoots it. He doesn't think about it for a second. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when that ball is dropping like it is for him right now, it looks really good. And the other thing that I love about him, this guy's got some nice physicality combined with nice touch around the rim. He goes inside. He's only a frail, a young kid. He's 19 years of age, so he's just thin. Obviously, doesn't have much meat behind him, but he's got nice finesse and nice touch. And he'll go in there and he'll be not afraid to use that left hand and go up for a high layup. He got Evan Mobley and Isaac Okoro, I think it was the other day, both jumping before he laid it up and dropped it in there. So he's really starting to figure it out. And I think another thing for the Hawks, which is huge, DeAndre Hunter started the season in the starting 5 and Rissachet was on the bench. But then Hunter missed a lot of time, the birth of his child. He was injured as well. He missed about 8 games. And so he came back off the bench. And since he's been back, he has not gone into the starting lineup. He's come off the bench and he's been really, really good, really thriving in that role, averaging about 18 points a game, shooting the ball really well. And again, key against the Cavs, especially in the second game here in Atlanta on Friday, he just feasted on George Niang. Like, it was clear the Hawks' instructions were like, whoever Niang is on, go to him, because Johnson had him a couple of times. I think even Dyson Daniels had him a couple of times, and it was like, just dump the ball into him, whoever's got Niang, and go to work. And DeAndre Hunter absolutely feasted on him. So, yeah, 3 impressive wins in a row, and they've got the Pelicans here tomorrow night, which should make it 4. The Hawks go to Milwaukee on Wednesday for maybe 5 in a row, and then the Lakers are here on Friday night. So, could be a game of the weekend next Friday night.
Let's watch together. No,
yeah. Come on over, come on over to it.
I'll head on out.
Yeah.
The Hawks also recently in the news. They got fined $100K by the league for, I guess in the league enlisted an independent doctor to go in and take a look at Trey Young for a game that he didn't play in. The league considered him healthy enough to play. The Hawks held him out of that game. The funniest bit of all this, Leigh, they won the game without Trey Young
in Boston. This is what's crazy to me, because surely the design of that rule is to prevent obviously teams taking a dive, and going out there and losing a game, just saying, you know what, we're going to mail this one in. But if that team goes out there and wins, especially again in Boston, surely the league would have to say, well, even if he wasn't 100% healthy, whatever was going on there, the Hawks did not throw that game. And so, now I heard something, I don't want to speak on it now because I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard there was another reason why he missed that game. And so I'm trying to find out if that is true or not. And I think that's where the fine actually got triggered from. It wasn't to do with the injury. So again, I don't want to speculate on that because I've heard something, but I don't know if it's true. But because other than that, it just makes no sense for the league to say, we're going to hit you with $100,000 fine for not playing a game that you won. Like, why would you possibly punish a team? I mean, again, this would be like the game last night in Charlotte if they said, you know what, there's no LaMelo Ball, there's no Miles Bridges. Okay, Trey rest, Jalen Johnson rest, Hunter rest, Capella rest, and just completely gut the team and play their second unit. That is when you are throwing a game or certainly not competing at the best level. To do it this way was just weird. So I believe the Hawks have appealed it too. So we'll find out. We'll find out if they do win that appeal or not. But yeah, very, very weird from the league to really come down with the hammer if it was for the reason they are saying it was for.
It kind of felt like I don't know how much of a college football fan you are, but back when the Pac-12, because I grew up on the West Coast, so I always cared more about UCLA. My wife is a USC fan. I have friends who are Oregon fans, and one of my best friends in this industry, Aaron Larsoul, he's a Cal fan, and the Pac-12. Anytime a team would get like good or like pretty good or really threaten the SEC, that's when the NCAA would come around and hit them with these fines and stuff like that for paying players and stuff. And you would look at like, hey, come on, we know that those schools in the SEC also do that, but for some reason don't ever seem to incur those fines or get looked into in the same way. And it was always kind of like, it always felt like the NCAA was going at teams that they felt that not enough people would really care about or really like take the punishment all that seriously. You would just kind of look at it, and then everybody would kind of move on, and it would placate people who don't want to see college kids getting paid. And I kind of feel like with this one, Trey is definitely a star. I don't know if I would go so far as to call him a superstar, but he's definitely like a
All-star.
bigger name.
Yeah,
he's an all-star. He's a bigger name in the NBA, but not somebody who anybody's gonna, and everybody just kind of like when it happened, just kind of laughed when the news hit. And I really kind of felt like it was the league kind of making an example of the Hawks. For something that everybody is talking about a lot. I saw Byron Scott was in the news recently for saying that that load management is soft and that it doesn't even work, which injuries have only gone up in the load management era.
That's very weird, but true. Yes.
And so it is this kind of touchy subject that the league wants to make it make it appear as if they're really caring and they're taking effort to kind of dissuade load management, especially with stars. And this felt just one of those situations where it was like, it's Atlanta, nobody will care.
That's very interesting though that you say that, because I know that nationally the Hawks don't get any love at all, really. No one really does care. It's no one's like, oh man, watch out for the Hawks right now. But that I think does play into it somewhat, where it's like the NBA. It's almost like a test ground. It's like, just throw $100,000 at them, see if anyone notices, and see what the reaction is. Because again, I just come back to the same point. I'm like, but surely, after the game they go, hey, Trey Young, we don't think he was injured. They said, okay, so they got smoked by the Celtics. No, they won. Like, oh well, forget it then. Like, don't worry about it. Like, what's the deterrent here? What's the real thing? Because again, like how some of these injuries, I don't think can be proven by, an MRI or anything like that. Anyway, if someone's like, listen, I've just got a sore, whatever, then that can be one of those things where it's like, hey man, you're playing so many games, so many back-to-backs, training and traveling and all that. It's like, I just feel sore tonight. That can be as simple as it is. And so, unless you are going to permanently ban any sort of load management, then it's really very weird to, choose one team and one incident and say, this is the one that we are dead against. Like, I am sure if you went through every single team this season and were like, okay, let's get the injury reports out on all these guys, every single team would have had at least one incident of a player who's like, hey, he could have gone tonight. He just didn't,
Yeah.
especially some of the older guys.
Especially later in the season too, is,
Of course.
everybody's trying to capture the flag. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it'll kind of fall by the wayside. And it does. I don't know. It always just kind of feels a lot to me like, picking on a team that everybody's going to kind of chuckle at the fine and everybody's going to kind of move on. Whereas like if you do this with the Lakers, or if you do this with the Celtics, or you do this with the Warriors, or you do this with some of these other teams, the Knicks that have a lot more eyes on them, people would make a bigger deal out of it. And I am really kind of curiously, like you said, that if, with Atlanta appealing this, I wonder if we're going to find out a little bit more what goes into the process of like, why was it Atlanta that caught this fine, when again, it happens all over the place. And it's fine. Like you want to make it look as if it doesn't happen as much or whatever. But this, I think, only brought more attention to the fact that it happens.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, the older guys like DeMar DeRozan, who I have utmost respect for, a vet who's been around forever. He sat out a game just the other day for whatever, just load management, rest or whatever. Now, again, I think a lot of it does actually come down to the time you announce it as well. So it can affect the betting markets and things like that. But all of that should fall secondary to the result of the game. It's like the Hawks, not only was that game huge in terms of getting a road win, that had a massive implication on the Hawks Cup positioning too now, because it was a cup game in Boston. And the fact that they beat Boston and Cleveland in their cup games, they lost to Chicago. They lost to someone else. That's maybe it. But either way, that had a direct impact on whether or not the Hawks, where they will finish for the next round here of the Cup tournament. So it's truly bizarre. But hey, the Hawks could be going to Vegas. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but we could be finding ourselves in Vegas playing for the championship. That would be hilarious if they actually go on to win the championship. Yeah, win the championship, hang a banner, and Trey got $100,000 fine. So
let's talk about the Bucks, where it really kind of feels like all season it's been them just kind of trudging along. And now Mike does make a good point here, Mike Weisberg, in saying that Milwaukee's schedule has been really light. It's alarming that Giannis has had to produce on the level he has, given who they've played, to barely beat those teams in some cases. Houston is a good team. I wouldn't include them here. Chicago been up and down. If you were to inject, I think Chicago's ownership and front office with some truth serum, I think they would prefer that Chicago lose a little bit more than they have so far this season. Miami is always going to be kind of frisky. Indiana has been up and down this year, but they're a good team. They were just in the conference finals. Charlotte, you should not require Herculean efforts from Giannis to beat them. And then Washington, who just went through a no-win November. But still, 8-2 out of their last 10, given how they started, I think does really kind of matter. The part of it that I really want to talk about, we always get these, it feels like every time LeBron makes a layup in warm-ups, you have people telling us not to take LeBron for granted. I really kind of feel like we're taking Giannis for granted.
Yeah.
Because the stuff that he is doing so far this season, if Milwaukee didn't come out to the horrendous start that they did, he would be more of a MVP factor. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this guy is like single-handedly keeping that team afloat, and is really kind of the engine and the rudder and the sail and the hull and basically the whole damn ship for Milwaukee. Insane season so far from
and I mean, when they were on that losing streak, remember Giannis was clearly upset in the locker room. He was calling out someone, I'm not sure who it was, and then the last game they lost was that one where the bad call was made, where I think it was on LaMelo Ball, and so they lost by a point. And then since then they've rattled off 7, I think it is, in a row. And Giannis, to me, what I really like is that he has clearly said the buck stops with me. And so he's said, all right,
No pun intended.
no pun intended. But what he clearly, to me, it looks like, is he's decided the only way I can really get people to follow my lead is for me to just go out there and ball out like he has been. He's been super aggressive going into the paint. He's been trying to dunk and ram his way through and just get in there and get those baskets that are like, where he can do the flex and he can do the yell and the scream and that sort of stuff that like galvanizes your team. I think he and Lillard are starting to figure some stuff out. I don't think there's a great connection there, but I think they're getting a little better. But more importantly, I think they're just also sort of saying, okay, we are two superstars. We need to figure out a way to make this work. But, that's what it ultimately comes down to, is how your team is only going to play as hard as your best player is going to play. And Giannis is putting up another MVP season. It's a tight battle. He's probably not even in the top 5 right now, based on the odds. It's Jokic, Tatum,
Okay.
I think Shea, yeah, and there's a couple of other players there. But
who said that?
But Giannis is, this is what I love to watch about him. And this is why I always believe, I have believed certainly for the last couple of seasons, Milwaukee should be the best team in the East, because I just think he's unstoppable. And defensively as well, he can guard anybody. He can guard your center. He can guard a forward. He can guard a point guard as well, if necessary. And that's why it makes him so valuable. He is ultimately a two-way player, not afraid to get dunked on because he will contest every shot. And then he never makes an excuse. He steps up to the free throw line. He'll take the ball. He'll take on the big shots, and he'll drag his team to victory. So I have the utmost respect for the way that he plays the game. And after that bad start where he did call out a teammate, whoever that was, he's clearly gone on to sort of show, okay, well, it starts and ends with me, and then the results are shown. But Mike, you mentioned as well, they have also had a fairly winnable schedule. They should be winning these games, but at the end of the day, none of that stuff matters, because you have to go out there and win, and that's what they're doing. So they're looking better. I think they've got Boston actually coming up here too, which is going to be interesting, because that'll be a bit more of a test, especially because I think Drew Holiday loves playing against Milwaukee right now. So yeah, they're at Boston on Friday. Oh, that'll be the second biggest game on Friday night after the Hawks. So yeah, they've got the Pistons. Then the Hawks. Then they go on a bit of a interesting 3-gamer at Boston, at Brooklyn, and at Cleveland. So, that's certainly a tougher schedule. Then they've got the Wizards and the Bulls and the Nets and the Bulls again. So, but right now, I definitely think that you're seeing real leadership out of Giannis, and it's starting to affect the rest of the playing group.
Giannis has played in 17 games so far this season. He's playing in 35, just a hair over 35 minutes per game. He's averaging 32.9 points per game.
Yeah.
He's averaging 11.9 rebounds per game. He's averaging 6.5 assists per game, about a half a steal per game, a block and a half per game. And really interestingly, his 3-point attempts are way down this year.
Yeah.
For a while there, the big, what if with him was like, man, if he ever starts knocking down that 3, look out. And he's basically, he's taking fewer than 1 per game so far. And is just absolutely, like you mentioned it earlier, a force of nature offensively. He just, those 3 sometimes felt like you would, kind of let the defense off the hook. He's not letting the defense off of the hook on offense. It is just, and if he isn't getting all the way to the rim, he's very comfortably taking those like mid-range, elbow distanced jumpers that I think make him a lot more threatening of a player than the threes that he was taking, the last couple of years or so.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what it comes down to with someone like him, is any team, doesn't matter if he's shooting 45% from threes, teams will just let him shoot, because it is still a gamble of like, hey, he's not inside bullying defenders, and he's not just like smashing it down and getting to the free throw line. So you would live with that. But, he tried. Didn't become, hugely successful at it, but at least he's like, okay, well, I'm not just going to, stubbornly keep firing away. I'm going to go inside where they can't stop me because he can put the ball on the floor. He's got those long arms. And, when he gets into the paint there, he really loves to throw it down. So he certainly is fun, enjoyable to watch. And, you're seeing the results here. So it's going to be very interesting again. I mean, I don't want to get too excited, but Hawks at Bucks on Wednesday. I'm very interested because the Hawks have got some good defenders they can throw at him. No one can stop him one-on-one, but you've got some, athletic guys and some big guys like Okongwu, DeAndre Hunter, Dyson Daniels will probably get a couple of possessions on him, and Clint Capella. So, the Hawks know that obviously you're going to have to throw a lot of attention there on Giannis, but he could also just be like Arnold Schwarzenegger in what is it? Commando, where he just beats up all the cops who just pile on top of him all the time. So, very, very, very interesting. But Giannis, love watching him play, and love seeing the Bucks at least now getting back on track where they should have been at the start of the season.
Yep, absolutely. Final team here in the East that we're talking about is the Orlando Magic, 9-1 in their last 10. Doing this without Paolo. Who is still out. Franz Wagner is having his kind of like full-on breakout season. One of my favorite things to kind of keep an eye on with on ESPN, if you go to their team schedule, it'll highlight like the top rebounder, the top assist player, the top scorer too. And if a player is really on a run, like you'll watch like Jokic sometimes. If you look at that link for the Denver Nuggets, Jokic is always somehow like the top rebounder, top assister, top scorers. Well, look at Wagner basically over this run. He is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10, 11, 12 out of their last 14 games, he's been the high scorer.
Yeah.
He is, I would say, more often than not, I would say he's like, I would say 50-50. He's their highest rebounder in all of those games. And then he's always their top assist guy, basically night in, night out as well. Just absolutely putting the team on his back while Paolo has been out, and keeping them afloat in an East that, if Milwaukee starts to look a little bit more like they should, and if this, run that they're on continues, that'll be a competitive team. But Orlando is sitting at the 3 seed right now, 15-7 on the year. Franz, a incredible season from this guy.
Yeah. Well, and very well what happened against the Lakers there. I mean, the Lakers should not have lost.
That. I mean, there's just 9 other games we can talk about.
I can't believe they lost that game when Davis couldn't hit those free throws, and then Franz came down and just hit that bomb of a 3. This is honestly kind of exciting for the Magic because they just haven't not been relevant really since they traded Dwight. That's how long it's been. And to do this with Paolo on the sideline, who's averaging himself 29 a game when he was playing this season, it's like, man, they've got some weapons. Jalen Suggs, very, very good player, good defender. So, things might be starting to turn around. Mo Wagner, of course, Franz's brother, former Laker, not quite as good as Franz, but work well together. And so this is kind of one of those teams that it's like, hey, yeah, they sort of sneak up on you a little bit because they don't have that huge name out there dominating. Again, like Franz is not a huge name, but he's very, very skillful, very, very talented, and he's really starting to come into his own. So this is an interesting team, and the East does feel kind of open somewhat this season right now. So maybe we could be seeing something on the rise, because I remember when they traded Dwight, and it was like, man, they just were rebuilding forever. Yeah. And so maybe now they're starting to turn around. They must be getting Paolo back pretty soon too, because he's been out for a good 3 weeks. So I think he was slated to miss a month, and they'll get him back here pretty soon. So, and they just had that weird sort of little baseball series against the Brooklyn Nets this weekend, but won them very, very comfortably. And the Brooklyn Nets have been a surprisingly good team this season too. They just went out there and after the Suns knocked off the Lakers, then the Nets went out there and won in Phoenix. So that was really interesting. Orlando has got New York now coming up, the Knicks that is, and then they've got a couple more in Philadelphia. So they'll probably win both those in Philly. But Orlando, New York is actually now quite an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the East is finally like a respectable conference.
Finally,
like it's about time. Like,
yeah.
Nice of them to join the season. It only took getting to December to reach this point. But like, you know what? At the end of the day, better late than never. And like, to be clear, Orlando has been good from the start of this season.
Yeah.
And the concern was when Paolo went down, that they might fall off, but Franz has kept them together. And look, that wing combination, like one of the things that I always keep an eye on is which team is getting the best wing play, because that's normally one of the teams that, those kinds of teams are really tough out. And if you have Paolo and you have Franz, and then you have tough defenders like Suggs on the perimeter. KCP has started slow this season. I think eventually he's going to pick things up as well. Like that. And then inside you have tough defenders like Wendell Carter Jr. and Jonathan Isaac. This is this is a team pieces. There's going to be like one of those teams in the East. Maybe Orlando messes around and knocks off one of those top teams, but one of those teams in the East, whether it's the Cavs or the Bucks or the Celtics, like one of those teams are going to have to go through two really, really tough series now because Orlando appears to be this kind of legit. And that's all I was kind of hoping for from the East. It's like, don't make it such a cakewalk for Boston again this year. And so far with the Cavs taking a step forward and with Orlando looking the way that they do, and maybe if the Bucks continue this run, finally, it won't be as easy a walk to the finals for Boston if they get there at all.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think that was the thing. There was no real intrigue last season in thinking that someone was going to seriously take down, the Celtics. And so now I think you can make the case that there are two or three teams, like with all of them, they've got to stay healthy. They've got to keep it together. Can't have too much sort of internal chaos, and the Bucks had some of that going into the season. But if they can now, figure things out, and if Orlando can just be resilient like this, then you've got to be excited because again, I like those guys in the middle there, like you mentioned with Banchero and Isaac. Like you don't have to be a superstar in Isaac, but you have to be someone who can go out there and protect the rim and play a role. Because Banchero can do it all on the offensive end. He's great. And, I'm honestly, I'm enjoying watching the Magic. It's just not something I've said for a long, long time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting. It's really cool to have them back. And then because it's the West, and you would think, all right, maybe the Mavs started a little bit slower here, or, the Suns are without KD for a little bit there. Maybe they take a step back. Nope. Now we're just finding good teams that step into any void that ever gets created.
Yeah.
The Houston Rockets currently sit second in the conference right now, 14-6 overall. They've won 8 out of their last 10. And then Memphis right behind them, having only played the one extra game, they are 14-7, winners of 7 of their last 10 as well. In both of these cases, really cool mixes of obviously veteran presences, right? But also these up-and-comers who I think in this new CBA, all of these teams are going to need production from their youth from now on. And Houston in particular has a really cool combination of that youth and those vets. and they're figuring that out on the fly. I know we talked about Fred VanVleet losing his mind a couple of shows ago, and that's been all we've talked about them to this point. But now with Houston, like they appear to be pretty freaking legit. Thompson there looks to be one of the best, if not the best, perimeter defender in the league. What a fun, cool story going on there in Houston and in Memphis.
Well, yeah, and Tari Eason as well, as far as a defender. I mean, he's averaging 2 steals a game and a block a game. And then the Şengün in the middle, who is just really incredibly talented and so much fun to watch. And Jalen Green is their leading scorer. I think it's always a good sign when you have, this, when you got one guy's averaging 19 points a game, he's leading that team. But they've got then Şengün at 18 a game, Fred at 15 a game. What Fred did was not as bad as what Trae Young did, apparently, like only half as bad. But they've got so many guys out there contributing and playing well together. And of course, Dylan Brooks, everyone's favorite villain. I mean, he's a good player to have on your team, though. Like, it's so easy to dislike him, but he's very, very effective. But yeah, Jalen Green has taken a step up, I think, this season. And Şengün, I mean, he's got all those moves. I know there's the baby Jokic comparison, and you can see it out there. He's got that soft touch. He's got the ability to pass the ball well. He can hit that little midi. And things are starting to come together. I know they're playing right now against the Thunder, and it's a tie ball game there with about 7 minutes to go. So this would be a huge one if they could knock the Thunder off here. It's in Houston, so we'll see how that one plays out. But the Rockets quietly 14-6 on the season. That's got to be the team with the best record that has been quiet about how they've been going about it too, because I think a lot of people coming into this season still thought Houston was like going to be better, but certainly not a lock for the playoffs, more a sort of play-in team, and maybe they could sneak in, but they're certainly playing above expectations right now.
Şengün, like, one of the nicest things I think I can say about a player, especially a big, it really appears to suck to play against him.
Yeah.
On a night in, night out. Like, he looks for contact. He looks for any opportunity. If you're a little off balance, gives you a little elbow in the side there to knock you further off balance. Takes his little shots like after whistles and stuff that really appear to annoy the guys that he's competing with on any given night. And those are the kinds of things that like wear you down over the course of a game. And really fun player, obviously, as well. The baby Jokic stuff, I think, got a little overblown there because I just feel like it's really unfair to hold anybody to Jokic's standard.
Yeah.
But like you watch this guy play and he's an absolute load. He's impossible to move. Great touch around the basket, great feel for the game as well as a passer. And then what they've done in Houston basically is they surrounded him with all of the length and all of the athleticism, because he isn't going to be the best rim protector in the league ever. But if you have enough around him, in terms of that perimeter defense that doesn't allow, nice straight line drives to the basket and stuff like that, that makes his job that much easier there. And then he can just focus on being the impact offensive player that he is. So, cool build that they have there in Houston.
Well, and that's right though. When he gets the ball and he's got all those moves, he can spin, he can put it on the floor. It is just very, very tough to know exactly what he's going to do. To have those soft hands. You've got a touch of Pau Gasol, I think, to him as well in that regard. That he's just, he's sort of one of those guys who doesn't look necessarily that physically strong, but he just knows how to move you out of the way. And that's another real skill there, is to be able to just sort of just give a little nudge, a little bump, get to your spot, and then before your defender knows it, they're sort of buried under the rim, and he's just throwing up one of those little baby hooks, little baby, teardrops. And so he's been fun, but interesting to see how they go here against the Thunder tonight, because Hartenstein has been incredible since he's come back too for the Thunder. That's a huge get for them, considering that they're going to be without Chet for quite some time. Hartenstein has just slotted in there beautifully.
Yeah, the fact that the Thunder were able to get Hartenstein and
Caruso.
Caruso without giving up a first-round pick, Sam Presti, good Lord. I think that's all that we have for headlines. So, Leigh, where are
Yeah.
we going on Thursday?
Yeah, so I talked about this last Sunday that we're going to go to Paris, back to Pigalle du Perret, and we are going to do that. I managed to get the video together, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and about the history there of Pigalle du Perret. I played there, and then they've set their fourth different, or it actually might be their fifth different design. And this one I think is maybe the most beautiful. Stefan Ashpool is the lead designer, did a fantastic job with it. And so I'm just going to talk about that court and the history and what it means and how beautiful it is. We're just going to really look at it and admire the colors and what it all means to the designer, the artist, and the team behind these different colorways and schemes.
I can't wait. The last time we heard about Paris was a really fun story where you that was where you gave a jersey to a player who had no idea that who Mike Bibby was. Or
That's
that
right.
he could
Yeah,
win a
Lucas.
jersey.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
no, fun stories there. I can't wait to hear about them. And yeah, that I think is going to do it here for this episode of the Basketball Passport Pod. We made it through the flu game, Leigh. We're holding each other up at the end of this game, just to sneak off and slink into the work week as we get ready for it. Again, a reminder: please do hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. If you guys are watching live, hit that like button as well. And then if you guys are listening in the morning to this via podcast, please do hit the subscribe button wherever it is that you get your pod. Also, those 5-star reviews go a long ways, and then keep on sending those emails to basketballpassportpod@gmail.com, where we will be able to get to those whenever we get them. So until Thursday, have a great rest of your weekend, and man, let's all try to get through this week and get healthy and enjoy that post holiday mortem of like,
Yes.
oh, great. Yeah. Monday. Fantastic.
Right.
Have a great one, everybody.